So I'm David Johnson. I'm a deputy editor at Stanford Social Innovation Review. It's a magazine based at Stanford University. We cover social innovation, and the magazine's largely written by practitioners such as yourselves. So if you have an itch to write for us, let me know after the panel. So I'm very excited to be here today for the first or opening track for place-based and community-based investing. So let me introduce our panelists. So over on your right, my left, we have Marcos Gonzalez. Marcos leads Los Angeles-based VamosVentures, a $100 million plus investment platform for scalable tech companies in the United States, led by diverse teams with a focus on Latinx entrepreneurs. Over here in the center is Kafi Lindsay. Kafi is the CEO of ImpactPHL, or ImpactPHL Philadelphia, a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to growing the impact investing ecosystem in the greater Philadelphia region. And then here on my left is Michelle Lee. Michelle Lee is principal at the BioFi project, where she supports bioregions worldwide in designing and implementing bioregional financing facilities. That is a new financial investable institutions grounded in living systems principles, indigenous wisdom, and the uniqueness of place. And she is also the founder of Studio Rye, a regenerative strategy and design practice. So the first, just to introduce ourselves to the audience, I wanted to ask you how you got involved in place-based and community-based investing. Let's start with Marcos on the right there. So tell us about how you got involved in this field.
Thank you very much. I sat on this side hoping I'd be the third one to answer. Marcos Gonzalez, and thanks everybody for being here. And I want to thank SOCAP for inviting us and for inviting me to be part of this great annual event. My career has not been in impact investing necessarily. I worked at the Boston Consulting Group for many years and then got into private equity in Washington, D.C. I'm from Los Angeles. My parents are immigrants to this country, like many others, looking for a better life from Mexico. And I'll share a quick story. I left that world to come back to California to start VamosVentures, to invest in diverse teams, Latinx entrepreneurs, trying to make the world a better place and have impact through wealth creation, economic mobility, and innovative solutions to problems that exist in our cities mostly, but really across the country. And I was at a gathering at our house, and I was telling some friends, I'm quitting my job in Washington. I'm moving back to California to start VamosVentures. And they're like, wow, that's great. Why? And I said, because my parents did not come to this country for me to just work at a private equity fund and make money for rich people. And my parents overheard this, and they turned around and they said, yeah, we did. That's exactly why we came here. And but I had my way, and I made my decision to come back to California and do this because I've always had, I think, a sense of there's a bigger purpose for us. And it took me a long time in my life to get to it, but I finally got there and decided to come back and do something that was meaningful and that we can be proud of. So it was that defining moment for me that put me into the place-based impact investing, world.
Kafi?
Good morning. Echo, thank you everybody for being here this morning. I know you had a long and wonderful evening and day yesterday. And I'll say my journey into impact investing really began in my childhood. I lived and grew up in between West Virginia and North Philadelphia, two very distinctly different places, but both acutely underinvested, one through redlining and one through the disinvestment that happened through the coal mining industry. And seeing those places and understanding what it looks like when you have this historic systemic disinvestment, but also the beauty of belonging to community there. From there, I went into and studied land development and planning in school with the aim and the will and desire, to advocate for these communities. Got into law school and realized that it's better to be on the planning side of it than it is to be on the fighting and advocating side. And really got into land development planning, worked in local government, worked on the law side, and then windy road ended up into community development, banking, into investment banking, and really saw, again, firsthand, just how traditional finance is not a complete tool to this systemic investing to really building out our communities into thriving places, and came into ImpactPHL, came into this organization in the impact investing space, and see it as a very underutilized tool that can be applied to place that we can use to grow our regions and have the thriving communities that we all want to live in.
Michelle?
Ooh, so good. Good morning, everyone. Let's see. Okay, how did I get into place-based community impact? I think it's been a pretty winding river of a journey or a career. Started in healthcare consulting. My parents were immigrants, so I was like, "You're going to be a doctor? No. A lawyer? No. Fine, do business. Okay."
Not engineering?
No. They were like, "We know, it's fine, okay." But from there, I think there was always just a mission-driven or impact desire. How do I do good? And that took me through these different rivers and turns: consulting, healthcare. I was in Hong Kong at a social enterprise working on solar renewable tech in the Tibetan Plateau. Early stage startups are highly volatile, so I come back to San Francisco and then I go right into more early stage startups and I think that was kind of it was a continuous widening circle of care and conscientiousness. So that was starting in startups, which was really focused on software. And from there I was like, but who's the whole human that's using this screen or this laptop? And so then I moved into the built environments. That's architecture, interiors, city planning, and really focus on strategy and purpose. And there we could design the whole human experience. Like I was overseeing the Google account. I can optimize for Google employees, or I've pretty much touched every building that Google has here in the city or innovation centers in Tokyo. But I think that was really the final shift, was from human-centered to really the whole living system. Right? If I optimizing for humans, but without widening my circle of care to what is this land that we're situated on? What is it saying to us? What about the communities? Then, we end up with multiple wicked problems: polycrisis, metacrisis. And so for me, it's just been this continuous expansion into now really thinking about place as an alive, essential entity, as well as the communities, as well as the businesses that we're a part of.
Thanks. You mentioned crisis and volatility. We're living in very volatile times in many different respects. We cover the social sector at SSIR. A lot of nonprofits have had their funding cut back, whether through the federal government threatening foundations and nonprofits for some of the work they do. We've had a lot of social volatility with social movements in the past couple of years, fights over elections, polarization, and so on. So tell us how volatility has affected your work in place and community-based investing, and maybe how you've responded to that volatility.
Yeah, I think it comes down to what we're seeing and noticing is returning to place and local. So for us, place, I kind of think of it as the Trojan horse. It is the one thing that all local peoples have in common, regardless of ideology, across socioeconomic, et cetera. It's the thing that we have that actually grounds care. And from care, we can expand. I think one example actually is we're coming up, or just happened to have the 1-year anniversary of Hurricane Helene in North Carolina, Asheville area. And it's really interesting what's happening on the ground, is that you have people and community members that are across the political divide. Very different symbols that are coming to the same kind of work parties and work days and stuff, but people really realizing that they're committed to that place. And Asheville, which thought it was highly resilient from a climate place, and they're all realizing they actually weren't. And there's this now deep commitment and care of that place, of coming together across the political ideologies to be really working on understanding what is this place from a geological, biological, and social and economic perspective, for them to be building and growing forward together in a different way. And so things like that actually give me a lot of hope. Examples in LA, and there's a lot of connections here with LA, so I'll just share a quick one, but given the fires and and ice raids and everything, you're seeing a real kind of coming together at the local level that maybe quite hasn't happened. If you look at LA from a design perspective, it really lends itself to fragmentation, right? It's really hard to get across neighbors. It's a neighborhood kind of thing, but you're seeing locals come together in a way that maybe as institutions and pillars that were supposed to be supporting and enabling citizens and right livelihood are clearly not happening. People are starting to organize and galvanize together on their own.
Kafi, how about you?
I'm going to build on that a little bit and talk too about the challenges. One of the things, I think we're still in a space where people associate impact investing with having to give up financial returns. The industry's proving that wrong. I don't have to tell you all, you're here because you know. The other one I'll say is just a real lack of creativity. I think finance is one of the most creative industries on the planet that I always go to. A bunch of people sat in a room and decided they were going to make derivatives. Anybody know what a derivative is, right? It's a financial bet on the value of a bet. It's really nothing. It's completely made up. If we can utilize that brain power and go into rooms to make these things that move trillions of dollars annually, we can also go into rooms and create the financial tools, products, and ecosystems that we need to build out our communities, that we can use that same level of creativity. We can make our own rules, that it's up to us to sit down and decide how we're going to go at and how we're going to invest in place.
I love that, by the way, that example of derivatives. And there are many, and there's all kinds of, but I think for me, what I'm going to try to do here is connect the 30,000-foot view, maybe the idea of derivatives and using creative energy to address challenges, and the more on the ground, how do we manage this day to day? There's an old saying that my boss told me once, Marcos, there's the budget you want, there's the budget you need, and then there's the budget you get. And so that many times in this environment of volatility, for us as a venture fund that raises capital from foundations and corporates and others, it is a bad time to be a Latino-led VC fund investing in Latino and diverse teams, especially if you say it that way. So it's not an easy time. So there's the environment that we want, there's an environment that we need, and there's an environment that we get. And it forces us to be creative and thoughtful. And this is all of us here, right, as principals to whatever mission we're driving. And we need to be aware of how do we get from today to tomorrow? That's the on the ground, the budget we get. On the other hand, it's a great time to really think about the creative approaches. Maybe this is going to force us to think about our problems and our challenges that we want to solve in a new way. And especially in these days when I'll be the first to bring up AI. Especially in the dawning age of AI, that's allowing us to do and see things differently. So for us, that's exactly what we're doing. How do we survive? How do we get past these very challenging days that we're only 9 months into? I think you all get that reference. And then, hey, maybe there's some other things we should be doing. Yeah, maybe we should be leveraging this new technology, new relationships, and new approaches. So that's how we're trying to do it. And I think I'm putting words to, what everybody here is trying to do.
Well, I'm definitely interested in creativity. So I want to know more about some of the opportunities you see in your field, investment opportunities, what you're seeing, and how you're creatively approaching them. So, Kafi, why don't you talk a bit about the opportunities you're seeing?
I think we spoke to it a little bit, and Michelle and Marcos have definitely talked to it. It's real power right now in place and in people that I do feel this is a real window of opportunity where we can come together and really think through how we want to invest in our communities. I might not be able to change what's happening on the Supreme Court right now, but I can have an effect, a direct effect on what's happening in my neighborhood, in my community. And really remembering that, we talk a lot about national systems and global systems, but every day we're people people that live in regions and counties and states that really come down into neighborhoods and our communities. And how are we investing and thinking through our communities? We have real power in those spaces. A lot of these systems are being dismantled in a very disruptive way. There's, that's happening. It's also creating space for us to create our new systems and to come together. I think Michelle spoke a lot about, what it means to be community, and people are really recognizing that. It's also an opportunity for impact investing and on a localized level for us to decide what it means to be community and what it means for us to invest in our communities to grow and have a thriving place that we all want to be in.
Michelle, how about you?
Creativity? Yeah, okay.
An opportunity.
An opportunity. I think creativity is like life's process for evolution. And there's so much richness when we open and expand horizons and perspectives. And so the work we do at BioFi Project is really centering on what we call bioregional finance, which is finance that is based on the uniqueness of a place and is taking a multi-generational, multi-species approach to a thriving bioregional economy. Right, so bioregional, what I mean by that is, let's take Berkeley, where David lives, and Oakland. Two different cities politically, right? And yet it's actually connected. It's the same watershed. Like the way the water flows, if there's fires and wind, it's affecting the place the same. And so when we say by bioregional, it is, we can look at political human-made lines, but we can also look at the contours of the lands that we're actually a part of, because they give us a lot of clues. And so a lot of creativity and opportunity comes with partnering with place and people. We get to partner with the creative intelligence of places and its people that call that place beloved. And when we kind of expand our horizon from not just this generation, but a multi-generational perspective, not just the human species, but multi-species thriving, there's a lot of interesting ingredients that we get to play with. And then those we can start turning into financial products and instruments that are really in service of life. So I think of bioregional finance as really life-aligned investing. How are we aligning the flows of capital with the flows of life? This is partnership, not dominator model. How do we create and sustain life versus extract and then move on to the next place and the next place? One more, provocation I'll throw out there around creativity and opportunity is there's so many ideas that we're going to be hearing and seeing from each other during these 3 days and afterwards. And maybe a challenge or a provocation is to learn, take inspiration, and apply it to your specific context. I think best practices are not creative, right? Best practices means this thing or idea or concept was born over here in this context, and I'm taking it out and I'm trying to apply it to my business, my organization, my city, et cetera. Learn from each other, but then it's not about replicating, it's finding the inherent essential qualities and uniqueness of each of our contexts and then sharing those.
Thanks. Marcos?
Thank you, Dave. I'll be very quick. In terms of opportunity, we when we were starting in 2018, 2019, we saw 320 deals across the country. This year, we'll see over 5,000 opportunities to invest in, all of them led by diverse teams, which means at least one co-founder from an underrepresented group. So it's very broad. I think we're also living in a time where if someone shows up to us, and I have to imagine it's the same with everybody in this room, as you're leading your organization, we all need capital. And if you show up and you don't have a dimension to your story that explains how you're leveraging technology, to us, that's an immediate sorry. Think about that and then come back to us. It's not a sorry never, but it's you need to think about the technology piece. And so I would absolutely, no matter what I was doing, be thinking about how you're going to leverage technology to fulfill your mission and to deliver your product or services efficiently. The good thing is, well, the bad and the good thing, we invest in 5 companies a year, more or less. So you can see the hardest thing about our job, and for me personally, is to say no. And so we decided we're not going to say no. We're going to say, look, not right now. Here's what we love about you. Here's what we love to see. And here's what we can do. Number 1, if you want honest feedback, we'll give it to you. Introductions, if we have them, we'll do it. And 3, you have an open door to come back. And most people will come back and will do that. But one of the pieces of advice that I give them, and I would give anyone, is you have several things going for you. Number one, generally speaking, you're relatively, young and you have a long runway. This is the entrepreneurs that we talk to. Number two, you're passionate about your problem and your solution. And three, you happen to live in the wealthiest country the world has ever known. So you need to find the investors that are already looking for you, because they're out there. It's not easy, but it wasn't easy for us. But eventually we had to find the folks that were already looking for something like us. And it took years and a lot of miles and sleeping on a lot of couches and a lot of floors, but they're there. And so that's what we try to do in terms of opportunity. It's a double-edged sword, but it's out there. Anyway, I rambled, but the 2 bullet points are technology and your capital sources are out there.
I want to know a little bit more about the communities you work with. Obviously, you know things that we don't, whether it's Philadelphia or whether it's Latinx startup entrepreneurs or bioregional areas. So what is something about your community that you've learned or know that the general public does not, that they should know? Who would like to jump in?
I'll jump. I love that question because everybody here probably has heard of this guy named Peter Thiel, right? Very, very well-known guy, and everybody has an opinion about him. But he's famous because legend is that when he interviews somebody, he asks them, tell me something you know that other people don't know or believe is false. And I use that when we were raising our fund. And so whenever I talk to a potential investor, I'd say, let me tell you what we know that most VC investors and others do not know. Number one, Latinx entrepreneurs are breaking into the scene in unprecedented numbers. Number two, highly technical. Number three, super resilient. Number four, super young, long runways, et cetera, et cetera. All these things make for a great entrepreneur in tech in this country. Most people don't know that. Most people have another image of what a young Hispanic entrepreneur looks like, if entrepreneurial at all. So that's something we know, a personal experience and being in the market that most people don't know, and that's our edge. So thanks for asking that. I spent a lot of time thinking about that.
And I'll go into the Philadelphia region, I think, and you may know, but Philadelphia has a long, rich history of impact investing. We were founded by Quakers and with a real ethos around preserving our biosphere, our bioplane, I don't know what you call it exactly, where half the city's actually a park, right? We have one of the largest city parks. We also have a history with, Leon Sullivan, who, if you're familiar, came up with the 1843 plan, right? Where every month a group of the Black community in Philadelphia would pay into a fund. They ended up opening Progress Plaza, which still stands today as one of the first wholly owned African-American commercial strips in Philadelphia. We have a history with Judy Wick, who opened a cafe there and had, shared workers, employee ownership. So ImpactPHL has been around for 10 years. Impact investing has been around since Philadelphia was founded. And we've been able to really build on that culture of collaboration, that culture of caring about our community, caring about each other, and really done a lot of work with seeding and bringing all those pieces and educating and convening. But it's a real wonderful place. And I'll do a quick plug because you may not know this. We have our summit May 13th and 14th, 2026, where we really go into place-based investing and we get into the how of this work. So if you didn't know that, now you know, and you can come see us in Philadelphia.
When is that?
May 13th and 14th, 2026, Philadelphia. Be there, be square.
Let's see. I think when it comes back to place and when we take a long enough time horizon view, it turns out most people's long-term vision for their lives, the people they care about, the places they live, is actually quite similar. Even across polarization, what seems to be polarization. It's almost like first level's polarization, we sink in and down. It's actually a lot of the same values, but we're all going about it different ways. Just like, what do we deeply care about? How am I going about it? And how do we illuminate the gap together and then walk that gap together? Again, I think of the North Carolina Asheville example. Another example is in Missoula. They're doing some really interesting prototypes and experiments around it's all connected: democracy, people, communities, place, citizen or people assemblies. And imagine you're in the community hall. There's round tables, different people are sitting at them, and then they're having this kind of moderated or prompted conversation. And you have a gentleman who's older, and he's wearing a MAGA hat, and he's saying, I'm really concerned about illegal immigrants because I care about the safety of our community. And sitting right next to him was a woman, a Latina woman, who was like, I don't know what to do with my son. We are undocumented, and I don't know if I should keep him from school or not because I'm worried about his safety. And so what's interesting is on the surface, she couldn't be more different, right? They clearly voted for different people too. But underneath, they actually care about the same thing, which is the safety of their community. And after that round table, they exchanged numbers. There was a lot of tears. And they committed and devoted to work together because actually they had the same shared values and long-term vision for what does a thriving, healthy, vitalizing community mean for us. And so I think maybe I always try to hold that. And so then it's like, if we know that to be true, then how do we actually start there? Not try to work our way there, but what does it look like for the conversation to start there? And then where can we go? I think a lot of our work in different bioregions around the world, we ran a cultivator earlier this year that had 22 bioregional teams around from Alaska to Argentina, but a lot of them are indigenous-led or indigenous partnered or indigenous advised. And when you go into these local communities, they know what they need. Like, who knows better how to steward a place than the people of that place that call that place beloved, right? And so they really know. It's like, we don't have to make it up. There's already people who understand how to partner with place and people. And it's really, like we were saying, it's like aligning and flowing capital towards them and towards life. And so I think maybe it's just the notion of like, there are people in our communities that already understand how to be in partnership and in relation, and how do we be in relation with them? How do we lift them up? How do we support and enable them and flow the funding to them?
You've all been in the field now for a while. Working in the field, what lessons have you learned that maybe you didn't know when you started off that you keep in mind as you pursue your various investments?
Okay. So I think ultimately you have to have a North Star, and it has to be inspiring, et cetera. But what a lot of folks sometimes don't remember, and we didn't really pay too much attention, was beyond the North Star, it's the how do you deliver on it, and what does that look like? So there's an old quote, many of you probably have heard, that you campaign in poetry and you govern in prose. And that's absolutely what we did. We raised money in poetry, and turns out to deploy money, you can't do it in poetry. You got to do it in prose. It's actually messy and technical and takes a lot of work and a lot of mistakes. And you have to learn the process and relearn the process, et cetera, et cetera. So I think what we've learned is you absolutely have to have a mission and a North Star, and I think probably everybody in this room and your organizations have that and should have it. And everyone here, including myself, should be able to recite that, right? This is our mission. But also, this is what we deliver. This is how we deliver it. And this is why we're unique. And this is a little bit tied to the last question that I hope people take away with them today as a bullet point, as a nugget. And that's that, when you're talking to folks that are your capital sources, you probably have a lot of competitors out there. Whether you're a nonprofit or a for-profit or any other kind of organization, I'm sure you have competitors. And so why you? What's different about you? What do you know that they don't know? How are you unique, and what's your unique deliverable? So I think you and your staff should be able to, just like your mission, this is what it is, our mission, how we're different, what we know, and how we deliver it. So that's what I've learned in the last several years, that it's not just the big picture.
Kafi?
I'm going to say in the work and as we go at it at ImpactPHL, the real importance of supporting the people that are building out the ecosystems, those intermediary organizations that for people to understand the value of investing in Latinx community, Black and Brown community, somebody has to do the educating, the convening around that, and that there is, it's not always recognized, like what happens with the squishy. Right, the people that are pulling together, that are educating, that are pushing ideas, that are bringing in new ideas. I'm really inspired by work that's coming out that's really speaking to that. The work that ImpactPHL has done, the work that BioFi is doing, the work that TransCap is doing, really thinking about capital orchestration, thinking about the financial backbones, really calling that out and naming the importance of building out those intermediaries, those people that are really dedicated to the ecosystem and pushing that squishy into poetry prose form, all the things that are necessary so that we can have this impact investing space and organizations and funds and all the things that get into the tangible.
Yes. Oh. Yeah, that's like the ecosystem and support.
I want to first, so I know you have more to say.
Thank you. No, thank you. That was just. Okay, let's see. I think speaking of what Marcos was talking about, is like having that North Star. I'd say yes, it's like for a place or a business, have that North Star. How do you come to know that North Star? Maybe so. What precedes that, or what is the process in which you do that? And I think a lot of it is starting with essence. What is the story of this place? What is our place? What is the story of this organization or this community? Like, what is it seeking to become? It's like asking those questions, and like we were saying, taking a multi-generational, multi-species approach so that we can then arrive at, this is our North Star. This is what is unique about this place that is, that actually ensures our economic viability and vitality, right? It's like when we are a one of one, it makes you much more resilient to becoming generified or gentrified, which is what we're seeing across places. So I'd say that's one. It's like really listening to the land itself and people. Another thing is, I think is like, wherever you are, begin there. And that could be small, and that's great, because small isn't small, small is fractal. When we look at nature, right? Trees and the branch, these are all fractals, and we can link scales. So a quick example around that is one of the bioregional teams and BFFs, or bioregional financing facilities, that we are supporting is just north of here in Sonoma County. It's a little town called Grayton. You probably pass through it if you're in Sebastopol or Russian River, but they are a town of about 2,000, teeny tiny, quaint little town. They are designing and developing their own first town square. Used to be a gas station, vacant lot, 30 years empty, because soil is being remediated. That community has bought that and is, through a multi-capital lens, not just financial capital, is developing itself and its vision of who are we and what is this place. That they've taken over and have bought the vacant fire station for the first community coffee shop, as well as community hall. There's so many ag and creatives there that there's purveyors and makers. How do we actually be supporting and enabling them? So they're doing an interesting trust, public benefit, and a venture studio model, this like dual financing model. I use them as an example because people are like, oh, it's so small, not really investable. But there are over 6,000, I think 6,000 to 10,000 small towns that are under population, 10,000 in America, that have been emptied out from an ag and industrial perspective. And this is the opportunity for each of them to come to know what is the uniqueness of our place and to become these creative, emergent villages once again. And so I talk about small, but it's fractal in nature too. And then I think the last thing is for investors is like we are all investors, whether you're literally that title or otherwise, investing into this life and taking a more holistic perspective. Really, there's risks and returns. Here we talk a lot about impact, but also then going even further and think about what is the effect of this? Am I increasing the investability of this place or this organization? Are we growing the wealth capabilities of this place and this people versus having to constantly be, funneling money in and then money going out? And so it's like, how do we grow the surplus of a place? And I think it's taking this kind of 4 returns framework or multi-capital approach that really helps widen us beyond just financial ROI.
Thank you. I don't know how we're doing for time. We're doing fine. So if you want to ask, there we go. So if you want to ask questions of our panelists, keep in mind you have to do it through the app, and then that will be transmitted to me. So let me ask another question. So, when I come to SOCAP annually every year, I get a sense of what's happening in the impact investing field and the state of it. And everyone obviously has their own perspective on it. So tell us, what do you think the state of impact investing as a field, how it is nowadays? Like, what is your sense of the state of play in the field?
That's a great question. Why don't you start?
I'm here to learn. I'm a journalist. I ask the questions.
I think that there are a lot of questions right now, even around how things are being defined and what we're saying. I also see people getting really exact about the work that they're doing, that the people that are in and here in the organizations and institutions that believe in this work are continuing this work. I love the anecdote I heard from the Japanese Sovereign Wealth Fund, where they said, we expect our money to be around for 100 years, so we're going to invest in a way so that the earth is around for 100 years. And there is an emergence of the organizations, institutions, and capital that feel that way. And hopefully we are throwing off the shackles of thinking and limitations and boxes that say we have to all do it in this one way, and we can come at it creatively with our new systems. Those are the conversations that I'm hearing, and I'd love to hear more of.
I think it's we're going through some challenges right now, obviously, but I think we've come such a long way in the impact investing world that I can't help but just see a line that's going up and to the right. There's going to be ups and downs, of course, but generally speaking, at least in the worlds that I'm involved with, asset owners, whether it's corporate or foundational or even on the pension side, I think it's here to stay. I think that those are all good signs. And I think really what's interesting about it to me is that it's still such a young industry in practice area that there's still a lot of room for innovation, maybe going back to one of your comments, Kafi, which is there's room for creativity and ingenuity in what impact investing is, and how it is practiced. So I'm optimistic about it, very much so.
I don't know. What do you all think? I wish I could, just get a smattering of everybody's brains and hearts and minds. And how's it going? What are you seeing? And what is the collective intelligence that we can kind of weave and that lifts up from all of us? Let's see. I think there is a longing for what is the effect of this work that we're doing that we each deeply care about. And I continue to encourage and want to see that, how do we start thinking about the effects versus trying to predetermine, we need to see these milestones and these things are going, how can we know? Some things we can know, but maybe others we can't. And how do we maybe design into the pros that space for emergence to arise while also giving enough structure to know it's this is how we all walk together forward. I don't know what that is. I think it looks different for every context again. Yeah, maybe I'll pause there because there's some questions.
So thank you. I have some questions from the audience. So let me start with this one. Each of you have seemingly broad areas of focus. Greater Philadelphia's top 10 metro, Latinos are 1/5 of the U.S. population. Bioregions are very large in square miles. How do you narrow your focus within your overall scope?
For us, it's pretty straightforward. We have to do that, or else it's just, we started actually by saying we just want to invest in the best companies that will deliver returns and impact through wealth creation, economic mobility, and innovative solutions, right? That's our mission. But you get distracted by the latest shiny thing that walks through the door. And so we realized very quickly we cannot do it this way. So then we said, what are the 4 areas or 3 areas that we know a lot about? And so we selected those. Still can't do that. So then we started drilling down what's happening in health and wellness broadly and what's happening in health and wellness when it comes to communities of color and underserved communities. Where do they overlap? And let's focus on that. And so that's helped a lot. So we've gone through a process internally where we took months off to actually do the research and develop our thesis around our verticals, which are health and wellness, financial services and inclusion, sustainability/energy, and future of work. Sounds very broad, but actually very specific.
I would say the same, where our work is, but that it's broad, but it's not specific. But that our focus is really on how we're orchestrating capital across the different sectors, whether it be philanthropy, investors, high net worth, family office, and foundations, and institutions, so that it can go directly into our region, and into the businesses, into the housing, into wealth creation and economic development tools in the region. So while it may sound broad, it's really about moving that capital and moving people into action.
Nice. And I'm such a fan of these two over here, so
We all
I like
best friends. Yeah.
So the BioFi project, which is a nonprofit, is fairly new. We're about in year 2 now. And so the first year came out with a big bang and was really about amplifying and sharing this way of thinking and being and kind of the hypothesis and the templates and how to design and stand up a bioregional financing facility in your area. And part of that, we, like I'd mentioned previously, we ran this cultivator. You can think of an accelerator, but think more like cultivating, as opposed to accelerating nature. But we had 22 different teams, like I said, across Argentina all the way through Alaska. And that was kind of our broad co-designing and co-journeying with these organizations to be standing up and capitalizing these new financial institutions that can take money from centralized pools all the way down to the level of place. And then in year 2 now, we're really focused on just a couple bioregions that we're partnering quite intimately with, and then have been, I think, nurturing this community of practice. It's over hundreds now, and they're mutually supporting and sharing with each other. The 4 bioregions that we're really partnering closely right now with are Hudson Valley, New York, upstate New York, Asheville, North Carolina area, also the Salmon Nation, which is a bioregion. This is part of the bioregion. It's anywhere that the wild salmon traditionally had swam, which is from Salinas, California, all the way through British Columbia, Vancouver, or Canada, and all the way into Alaska. So that is a broad one to the point of this question. And then also the Amazon Sacred Headwaters Alliance, which is 30 indigenous nations. It's an unprecedented alliance for over 30 years, protecting the headwaters of the Amazon, the size of Italy. But we are focused personally on those 4, as well as then supporting anybody that wants to design or stand up a BFF in their own place. And so, there were questions like, should we start our own fund or things? And for us, it was actually, no, we're really focused on enabling and supporting these specific bioregions, as well as the ability for other people to stand up their own BFFs, as opposed to trying to be funding ourselves.
Another question here. How can we understand a place's or a community's uniqueness if the residents don't own the research that influences policy decisions or investment decisions?
Thank you. That's a really beautiful question. So the 3 of us have been talking, and I think the thread that like underneath all of this is really about remembering agency and self-determination in each person, in each place, in each community, regardless of the forces or the powers that be. And so there are ways and practices, indigenous or otherwise, that help us come to be like, again, it's like that listening and attending to what is the story of this place? Who are we? When does this place become another place? Like, what is beloved and unique about us? And then I think it's like really weaving and stitching together, like at that level, to come up with that long-term shared vision, which can then become a formal strategy that we then be implemented. I really love your that poetry and the prose is like really sticking with me now. I was like, I hadn't heard it, and I'm liking it. But I think that there are forces and power structures, but underneath that, it's helping people and places and communities return to like remembering agency and self-determination.
And what I'll add to that is, like, why don't we own it, right? And really questioning ourselves, who says we can't own it? One of the initiatives and partnerships that ImpactPHL has taken on is with Invest for Better. And if anybody's heard of that, it's like cohorts of women that are coming together and becoming educated, empowered, and aligning their money with their values. And, starting in these small cohorts, it's now a national movement of women saying that, we want to value, align, invest. And in order to do that, we need to learn, we need to understand, and we're going to come together, talk to each other, and teach each other. So when we don't just have to accept that, we don't own, we don't just have to accept that these investments are coming from all these other places. We are investors. We do have agency. We do live in these places. We do have stake in our communities. And I'll say in that localized space, you have real voice. Like I said earlier, you have real voice on what happens in your block, whether that coffee shop becomes a thriving space or whether it closes, and that we need to reclaim the agency and the power around how we're investing and how we're viewing our communities.
I think I'm going to pass. I think they covered it all. So we'll go to the next question, please.
I just want to ask a quick question from one person. Can you repeat the name of the town that is building their first town square, Michelle?
Grayton, Graton.
So what is the relationship between Grayton, the town, and Grayton Rancheria?
Grayton Rancher, well, there's Grayton Casino,
Mm-hmm.
this is Grayton the town, and Grayton Rancheria, which is the indigenous group. And so there are relationships, and that's part of the work, is building and ongoing relationships amongst that whole area and the community so that they're weaving together and looking at, like, Grayton is a little town. It's situated within the Green Valley, which is situated within the Sonoma Coast watershed area. And so how do we, again, link those scales? And so there's weaving that is happening. Yeah.
Another person asks, how important is the framework for reparations or restorative justice to the work of place and community-based investing?
Wow. I think that's a very powerful question. I think that's one that we really need to think of. I put it in the framework of wealth creation and ownership platforms and opportunities within our communities. I think there's a lot of work being done in the Philadelphia region around the reparations movement. There's a woman there, Lucy, who's working with the Quaker movement around the reparations work. I think that's a very powerful question. I'd love to hear more. Please come tell me.
Yeah. So I'd mentioned Salmon Returns, which is working around the salmon bioregion. And their strategy is really focused on supporting indigenous and community-led initiatives for ecosystem restoration, cultural renewal, and economic resilience and of local communities. They're really flowing funds to indigenous communities and tribes because, like we were mentioning earlier, like, people know their places. They know what they need. And so earlier this year in May, I had the privilege of being with Salmon Returns and going up, and we were invited by the Yurok tribe at the Klamath River Basin. This is on the border of California and Oregon. Klamath River, if you haven't heard, really exciting. This was major dam removals along that river, and there's more slated in the areas as well. And so salmon's returned. It was actually unbelievable how quickly the salmon returned, the quality of the water, and that affects everyone. And so it's what we were saying with these BFFs in bioregional finance, it's really indigenous participation is key, and many of them will be led by or supported, partnered, or advised by indigenous communities and groups. And I think that's a lot of that work.
I saw a matrix the other day about reparations, and it was a 3x2 matrix. On the one side, it's place and people, and then on the top, it's housing, education, and fiscal taxes, and as the most effective ways to get impact. So whether it's free education, free housing or discounted housing, or tax rebates, and then across people and places. So, and I think the distinction was, it's not just about the place, but it's about empowering people to be wherever they want to be. So I get the place question, since that's what this track is about, but it's also about empowerment and liberty to move where you want to be. I thought it was an interesting matrix anyway.
How are we doing? Okay, I will ask one more question. So one person asks, I love the idea of a North Star. How have you tracked the impact against the North Star in a place or in a community, considering a place as an ecosystem?
So very quick, we have an impact report that we publish every year. We collect data from our companies and who owns the company, who are they hiring, jobs created, who's on their boards, how they spend their money. So if they're hiring a law firm, accounting firm, or others, is it a diverse owned firm? If they hire consultants, who are the consultants? Most companies freely give that information to us. They know we're going to respect the confidentiality part of it, and we put it into our report. I'm happy to share with anybody here. Just email me at marcos@VamosVentures.com, and that's how we do it, to track.
Okay, more time? Okay. Yeah, I think with the North Star then, I returned to like the 4 returns framework or a multi-capital approach. So there's like a return of inspiration, there's natural returns, there's social returns, and there's also financial returns, right? If we imagine in a North Star, it's like, what makes this place beautiful, vital? Like, why do we love living here? How do those then get translated? Some of it financial, and then others, like I was saying, the 4 returns. And so what are the signals and indicators beyond just the financial metrics that we can be building into our plans that we can then be reviewing and tracking against?
And I'd say ours is around really, again, like moving people into action with their investment dollars, with understanding that, your investment dollars make impact every day. As opposed to, having an endowment that's sending, a Philadelphia endowment or the Philadelphia City Pension Plan that is sending its money to be invested in New York or California, into these other places that it can be invested, where we are, and really focusing our intention into having those institutions, and our investors move into action in our communities locally.